such a luxury because I've seen them one movie at a time. It hasn't been going somewhere where every day is Lubitsch and you get Lubitched out. I mean, really, in a film festival or something. And I've really learned a lot about my father. And because of this wonderful book that came out by Joe McBride, I've gone back to it and read about it and written to Joe and said, oh, we're going to see this tonight. And what should I say, or what do you think? And he'll write something to me and I think, really? Is that what it's about? I think that because I was so young when my father died, I kind of, if this makes any sense at all, looked at these movies as a child. You make up your mind about what they are and what they represent and who your father was, and then it's locked into your head, and you only see them every once in a while, and you go with that same perception. And this time, it's really been quite different. So I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody.
So are you saying that you're not seeing him really as the daughter anymore, or the child, but really as an adult watching the work of another adult?
Absolutely, and taking the trouble to learn a little bit and to really, before it's, I don't need to know anything, he's my father, I'm not going to have anybody tell me who he was or what he did. And I don't feel that way anymore. I feel that I really want to learn. I really want to from you because you know so much. I've read your thesis and gotten a lot out of it. It was really helpful. So I'm very grateful to you, and I'm very grateful to everybody who has come and hopefully enjoyed it. And for those of you who didn't know my father's work before, I hope that you will come some more and learn more about it. And you'll do part 2.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right.
You can always show more Lubitsch, right? I think what's amazing for me is just how adult these films are. And you compare them to a lot of the movies that get made today, and you go, man, we've gone backwards full steam ahead, right?
Yeah.
Because there's just a level of maturity in this work, and it seems to me that of course, in the pre-code films, they're even more modern because they could say things that then, of course, after the code was established and there was much stricter censorship, they couldn't. But that's, and Joe McBride does make a point of arguing that the films before the code and after the code are very different.
Very different.
In terms of style, that before the code was instituted, he had really developed a very specific style of the way he told his stories, the way he cut the camera to give you that kind of adult information that could not be spoken, but that could only be shown and that you would understand. But that after the code, they became more conventional, let's put it this way, in terms of their editing structure and their narrative structure, because he was caught in the system.
And it all changed with the Merry Widow. That's when it happened, didn't it? During the Merry Widow, the code came in and he got into...
It did, and he was able, with the Merry Widow, still to make the film pretty much the way he wanted to, and then afterwards, though, it was cut for release because the Breen office, which had been set up basically by the Catholic Church in this country in conspiracy with the Hollywood, decided that there were too much risque stuff in the film, and they tried to cut it. But Breen wrote to a colleague of his. He said, "We should have never let him make this film to begin with." But it's really a delightful.
I love the movie. I'm glad that you're here to see it. For me, this has always been about dance. I think that my father was a great dancer. My mother was a terrific dancer, and they loved to waltz. And the Merry Widow waltz was really their waltz. And I don't know how many of you have not seen this before. Well, there's the most wonderful dance sequence. I'm not a film historian, but there is a wall sequence where they use about 200 dancers down a hall of mirrors, which I think changed how they did dance ever after. And the great dance scenes like The Leopard and later in Heaven's Gate, I think all came from this, descend from this. And also, I'm quoting Joe now, that this is really about how Daddy had a lot of men or women teaching men about how to relate to them, how to behave. And in this, it starts out with he's so full of himself, he's such an egoist, and she isn't having any part of it, and she just puts him down and plays with him and turns him into, gets him from being somebody superficial to really falling in love, and it's a whole change in the relationship and how things go.
It's interesting because, of course, again, this is pre-code, so Maxime's, which is maybe a nightclub, but is pretty much a house of prostitution if you look closely enough. And it really is about him as both an exploiter of women, but also a sex object himself, because
Yes,
you know, he is treated by other women that way.
And the funny part is Maxime's being a brothel, but they loved my father at Maxime's, and even, you know, long after he died and I would go with my mother, they would always treat us royally, you know, it was like he was an honorary citizen of Maxime's. So I just really wanted to thank all of you and to thank you and say how much it's meant to me, really.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.